Welcome to the Real Spoilers podcast. I'm your host, Paul from Heavy Spoilers, joined by none other than Greg from Real Rejects. We've decided to start a brand new podcast. You know, we're both in our 30s, so the next logical steps to make a podcast. And every week we're going to be going through the movie news, TV news, giving our opinions, and just having, a bit of a chat. I want this to basically become like Good Morning America or Good Morning England, where you guys at home, you're on the commute. You go into work or you're sitting in bed at night with nothing to do. You want some soothing voices to make you go to sleep. Then we're here for you to talk about all the news of the week, keep you up to date, and just have a great time. Me and Greg, we've wanted to do a podcast for quite a while now. We're working together on Zero Edition, which I'm wearing the t-shirt for. Greg's wearing his, which has sold a hell of a lot more than mine. So yeah, either go buy his, which is much better, or go support me. Yeah, but we just thought we'd kind of come together for this podcast, talk about things in the week, because we're both, there's so many things to cover at the moment, and we don't really have the time to do massive in-depth videos on them. So take the laziest way out possible and just have a conversation every week going over it. We have got some good stuff to talk about though. And first off, let's get into the Flash reactions. Now, Greg, you were booked to go see The Flash last night,
and
but
they canceled my ass. They canceled me.
And this is how much of a cope it was. Greg was trying to seem like really cool, like, oh yeah, it's not because it's me they canceled it. They also invited Kevin Smith, and he got told he couldn't go either. And I was like, yeah, whatever, mate. Yeah, it's fine if you didn't get invited because Warner Brother.
I don't want you to look less of me, Paul. I want you to know that Kevin Smith also did not get invited.
But the reactions are out. I mean, how does it feel seeing those reactions, knowing that you could have been there? Yeah.
I know what it's like to be on the end when everyone bitches at me on social media. We're like, why did you get to go, Greg? And I'm like, well, we got a YouTube channel that does really well. And then I see other people going. And I'm like, why did they get to go? How come I couldn't get into that same event?
Yeah. I think what happens in with these screenings is they invite a lot of people because they think that some people are just going to say no. Like, not to brag, mate, but I get bloody invited to screenings all the time. But they're always down in London. And it's like the UK screenings, they're always normally the week of. And in the case, I think it was Guardians of the Galaxy. It was the Tuesday that it was the screening was on the Tuesday. The Wednesday morning was when the movie was coming out. At like 9 a.m. So I just thought like, I've got it's like a 6-hour round trip to get to London for me. So I just thought, just give that place to Greg from Real Rejects. He needs it more than me. But no, you get to go to quite a lot of the premieres, so I was quite surprised at that. I mean, every time, you met like Karen Gillan and stuff, and I was quite jealous about that.
Yeah, you take a good photo and it makes it look like that you're having the time of your life at a premiere. But really a lot of the time premieres, I'm just waiting around for the movie to start and I'm getting impatient. And, like I don't like socialize with these guys for a long period of time. I'm always from the mindset that they're not going to remember me at all.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give my compliment. Although Kamala Khan, Iman Vellani, she knew who we were, and that was a real honor. But but like Karen Gillan's not going to remember us. I'm like, I'm just going to take this photo, and everyone's going to be like, Greg, you're living your best life, man. So yeah.
No, it's cool. But so Flash was last night. Reactions are seeming very, very positive. That is kind of. I've noticed that kind of doing a bit of marketing with the screenings because they haven't shown the post-credit scenes. And I heard from someone who went to see it that the people were like, oh, mate, you're going to want to come back for the post-credit scene. And they didn't out and out say what it was, but from what I heard, the point they cut it, they're going to be bringing in quite a big actor who is, well, we don't know who the actor is, but they're bringing in a big character into the scene. It's what the end of the movie sets up, this big character's arrival. And then, they cut from there. So am I breaking embargo here? I don't know.
I'm weirdly okay with hearing rumors about a post-credit scene. That's
no one knows what it is.
For us.
No one knows what it is.
Okay, so you don't know at all like who it might.
They didn't show it. No, they didn't show it. No, they didn't show anything. So
no post-credit scene.
I'm sure they said you're going to have to come back and see what happens next when the movie releases. So come watch it again, which is quite clever marketing.
It's
Because,
Dwayne Johnson.
we've seen with some studios that they don't really care about letting people know what happens in the post-credit scene. Dwayne Johnson being a big proponent of this, spoiled Fast X, spoiled Black Adam, obviously Variety spoiled Harry Styles' arrival.
Oh yeah.
So I think that Warner Brothers are kind of being smart with the marketing here and saying, if you want to, you can come to the screening, travel that 6-hour round trip, but we're not going to show the full movie. So yeah, it is quite a smart thing. But the reactions are really positive. You know, some of the reactions do tend to be quite positive in general a lot of the time. Like we know someone who went to see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, didn't really like it, but they said nice things about it on social media because, and I'm not saying that's like, you know, that I hate that person who did it, but the way the reactions are geared is to more kind of promote the positive aspects of the film, because if they were allowing reviews, they just let reviews go up at the same time, but they have the reaction embargo earlier because it's more kind of like people are genuinely like, you know, coming out of a movie experience, you do tend to be more positive.
Sure.
And then it's when you sit down and think about it, when you start writing that review, you know, I'm not putting like 20 hours thought into a tweet saying this movie was good. So yeah, I can kind of see why they've done it.
Well, I've been to a lot of these screenings and premieres, and admittedly, I've had it happen a couple of times for me where a premiere, I've been able to disassociate my feelings enough, like separate from what the crowd is feeling to what I'm feeling. I've gotten much better at that, of just going, what am I feeling, instead of just responding to the crowd. Thor: Love and Thunder was the ultimate test for me when I was like, wow, that I watched it with the premiere. Everyone was like hooting and hollering the whole time and having like a ball of a time. So I walked out like, all right, this movie must be awesome. This is an awesome movie. And then when I rewatched it with a smaller crowd, I was like, oh, there's got a lot of problems with this movie, actually.
Yeah.
And I like when I saw Shazam: Fury of the Gods, I was able to separate myself from the crowd, and that was a real like knowing experience for me of people when they go to premieres a lot of the time, the whole hype, and it's different than just going to a screening, like a pre-screening. A premiere is like a celebration of the release. We are all going to watch this movie. So people are going to be cheering during the credits, like a names drop. It happens all the time. So it can be a bit manipulative on that front. The thing with The Flash that's weird is like I haven't seen a movie that just gets so many random celebrity endorsements all around. You know, you got like apparently Tom Cruise, you got Stephen King coming out and like but then Stephen King, Twitter. I thought about it. There's Andy Muschietti who did It, and I know he was. I don't know if there was like some kind of thing where he has to be nice, but yeah, I think. I think
it
is
comes out. He's like, it was shit.
It was shit, man.
Well, Stephen King famously saw Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and it was like, this is shit, mate. This is shit. If he'd had Twitter back then, I don't think the reaction to The Shining would have been a positive one. No. But he's came out. He said this is good, and I believe him. But yeah, but the reactions are mostly positive. Like the way I've kind of been with things is with reactions lately is I take them with a pinch of salt.
You should.
And it was purely because of, you know, some movies that have released recently that have got such good reactions, and then the reviews drop, and it's like, wow. Which we'll talk about one of those films in a while where the reactions dropped, and then the Rotten Tomatoes score dropped as well, and it doesn't look good for Indiana Jones, we'll say.
No.
But yeah, the Flash seems pretty positive, and they are screening it quite a lot. Like almost every week they're screening it somewhere. Yeah, I've heard.
I think the one thing, I mean, the last thing I think I'd say about it is what I've noticed too, because we were mentioning that there's some, I know a few people when it came to Quantumania who were bitching about the movie when it was done, and then I would go to their Twitter and it's nothing but praise. I think beyond the fact that some people have this preconceived notion, which is totally bullshit. Like I've talked to the Disney publicist before. He's like, I don't care if you don't like the movie or not. Just don't spoil it. He's been very specific about it. Like, you can be as mean as you want. Just don't spoil it. And I still get invited back, even when I am mean about a movie. I think some people have that thought, and the other thought is that I think people are scared of comic book fans, especially of disliking something and feeling the vitriol, because a lot of people have sold themselves on whether or not they actually like the movie before they've seen it, and they're afraid. People get afraid to deal with the backlash. Like Quantumania was one of the. I wasn't the first, but I was like one of the early people to be like, I don't know about this movie, guys. And then I got a heap ton of backlash over people who hadn't even seen it. And then sure enough, as the reviews start piling on, the more people started seeing it and disliking it. So then I was like, okay, I'm now not alone. But in the beginning, it was like, yep, this is just as I anticipated. I'm going to get a bunch of crap for disliking a movie just because it's a comic book movie.
And I think that, everyone kind of has imposter syndrome as well. A lot of the time, like I've got to the point now where I'll just stick to my guns, and if I don't like it, I'll say it. Like the amount of Disney Plus episodes that we'll watch together and text each other immediately after saying this was terrible or this was great. But I can see when we're first starting out, you're getting invited to these screenings and stuff, and you say, you think this isn't that good, and then you see everyone else saying this is the best movie I've ever seen. It's awesome. I can see when you're not that confident in your opinion that you might be like, well, maybe I messed up and I don't want to say this movie's terrible, so I'll just go with the crowd on it. But a lot of the reactions to The Flash that I'm seeing are people who aren't necessarily critics and don't necessarily go with the crowd. Like you've said, Tom Cruise, Stephen King, the person who spoke to me about it, he's not a critic. He just happened to be in attendance at the cinema when they showed it. And it is, the criticisms I've heard are that the third act kind of, devolves into your stereotypical big action set piece superhero thing, which, you can kind of expect. But they've said Michael Keaton's brilliant in it. Chris from 3C Films today, he talked a bit about the opening of the film, and he said that it felt like they finally got the whole Justice League stuff down, and they obviously the trailers have shown us quite a lot. He said the Ben Affleck thing at the beginning felt like all these storylines that have been building for the last 10 years finally came together and worked with a Justice League that was really well formed and working as a cohesive unit.
Wow.
Ezra Miller's getting lots of praise as well, and I think a lot of the reviews I've seen come with the caveat of, well, I can't condone some of the things that Ezra Miller's done, but they make a really great Flash in this film. And it's a bit of a weird film, I think, when you think about it, because the Snyderverse is pretty much no more. But it feels like it's going to be a celebration of that. And it's also a celebration of Tim Burton's Batman. And then at the end, it's going to be like, well, we hope you enjoyed that, because that's the last you're going to see of it. Never coming back. We're going to the DCU, which is a risk. Is that
what the post-credit scene is supposed to be for? Is to
James Gunn,
segue us?
Just pops up on screen and goes, well, hope you guys enjoyed that, because we're burning it all down. And then he just walks into like the Warner Brothers archive where all the films kept and just strikes a match and just all goes up in flames. He plays a trailer
for Creature Commandos. This is what you're getting, an animated movie. A show.
Starring Frank Grillo, who I want to talk about later because he said something quite interesting. But Flash reactions, genuinely positive. I am excited to see it. I think it's got a good chance of being the best live action comic book movie of the year. I think Across the Spider-Verse will probably be the best one. But I mean, Warner Brothers need a win as well after this, because they've had so much stuff. Like, it got to the point where I was just thinking, how can Warner Brothers just keep going? Because they're just taking L after L, and there's so much controversy around them. Even James Gunn getting hired, and then obviously all the stuff that happened when he, got rid of Henry Cavill and stuff. I know people are like, well, technically he didn't get rid of him because he never hired him, but they had a post-credit scene with him at the end of Black Adam, and then he posted an Instagram story saying, I'm back. And then 2 weeks later, I was like, well, sorry, guys. Turns out I'm not back.
So weird game of semantics that James Gunn was playing at the time.
Yeah, and the Flash especially as well. I mean, how many years has that been in development?
Yeah,
Like,
this is an odd year, man. I mean, like we were briefly talking about it. Like we had the pandemic, which created this whole crazy schedule issue and then filming
mm,
problems, and then this year it's like we got Jonathan Majors, which is he's
yeah,
very happy there's a strike happening right now, which is just causing more delays, and then people being fired, and then the Flash is finally coming out, a movie that's been
mm,
countlessly delayed, and it's just and like while they're trying to get the DCU, like we're finally doing it, but I don't think got the writer strike, which is preventing them from actually evolving in the DCU even more.
yeah,
It's a very very odd couple years for cinema in general.
yeah, definitely. It can be worrying as well. Like we have to do
Sure.
this full time, and I tell you, the stress of 2020, especially knowing that we were, you know, I quit my job in November 2019,
Hmm.
and to do this full time, and I was thinking, guys, we're going to the bank. It's gonna be crazy. And then the pandemic hit, and you know what? The anxiety of just being like, how the hell am I gonna make it through this month? Every single month, knowing there's not a movie coming out. And I remember Tenet got delayed, and then I like built myself up thinking, well, if I can make it to Tenet, I'll be fine. And then I remember being out on a walk next to my house, and I checked my phone and it said Tenet delayed again. And literally my heart, I just felt my heart sink because it was so bad. And I think, the writer's strike is probably going to have a knock on effect with us. There's going to be lots of different things. And that's kind of why we've started the podcast as well, because we just want like steady content over these trying times. Like, obviously, we're not going through the bad stuff yet. We just talk about the content. It's obviously the writers and the studios who've got to sort all that stuff out. I'm not trying to be like, I'm the victim in all of this.
Yeah, you
But
are. You're
it
100% the
can.
victim.
Yeah, well, that's because I've got a victim mentality built in. I mean, just look at my face,
I
punchable.
want
But
everyone to know that every month Paul's like, if I can just make it to this release date of this movie, and I'm always like
yeah,
looking at his channel, like, you're doing fine, Paul. You're doing
yeah.
better than most people I know, and myself included.
You reviewed RoboCop yesterday.
Yeah, RoboCop. It'll find nice of your
Yeah,
videos. You have these breakdowns that are like, oh, it's a dead, and then suddenly, like a week
yeah.
later, like it's blowing up, it's doing great.
Biggest video on the internet. But yeah, tell you who else is having a nightmare. Kathleen
Kathleen
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Kathleen Kennedy. Now, we aren't the type of people who make videos saying Kathleen Kennedy deserves to be fired. But we'll just
We
go
would
through
do
the
so
week.
much better though if we did. Oh my god, the easy views we
Yeah.
could get.
Well, once the strike hits and we've got no content, every day I'm making a Kathleen
Oh,
Kennedy getting fired video.
virtue signaling up the wazoo up in Disney. That's what we're
Mm,
gonna. We just gotta say a few keywords: virtue signaling, woke culture, pandering. What else
yeah.
is there? There's another one I'm missing. Identity
SJWs.
politics, SJWs.
Yeah.
Never
But
give context to it, other than just say it a few times.
yeah. But saying all that, I mean, it's looking at that point now where Kathleen Kennedy, I am starting to think, is it time to go?
Oh, she
So
should be
let's go.
fired. All
Let's go
sincerity,
through
she
what
should
happened
be.
just last week. Just last
She
week,
should.
right? And I think this was all in one day as well. So Willow got removed from Disney Plus. The
Mhm.
Star Wars park thing that closed down. Mandalorian season 4 is delayed because of the writers' strike. And
Wait. Can you
Indiana
slow down?
Jones,
What Star Wars? I totally missed the Star Wars park thing. What are you talking? Oh, the
the
hotel one.
the cruiser, yeah,
Oh
the one
yeah.
that looked
Okay.
like the prison from Andor, got
Yeah.
closed down.
Yeah.
Where it's like $5,000 a cocktail. There's like a $5,000 cocktail there or something, isn't there? Like some
Yeah.
crazy
Okay,
like
you're right. Yeah.
Kyber crystal cocktail where you pay $5,000 for a drink, and I bet it doesn't even get you drunk. I bet I put my life on that. I bet it's not got absinthe in or anything. I bet it's just like one shot of vodka and some Baby Yoda crap around the side, and that's what they're charging you for. But so yeah, Willow removed from Disney Plus. The Star Wars park thing closed down. Mandalorian season 4 delayed because of the writers' strike, and
Good.
Indiana Jones shown at Cannes debuts as rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, with I think the score dropped down to 33%, and IGN gave it a 4 out of 10. Now we're not like, well, IGN or the gospel. I've said on the channel quite a lot. You can't say ignorant without IGN. Um, but they're normally, I mean, those guys are normally 7 out of 10 every film.
Yeah.
But even without them, still, I think it's still rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. The score has gone up a bit. Everyone's like, whenever you bring up scores on Rotten Tomatoes, people are obviously going to the classic, well, Rotten Tomatoes doesn't matter, blah, blah. But it does. Like,
It does.
you might not agree with it or pay attention to it, but everyone must admit that the score on it matters, because as soon as that score comes out, whether it's good or bad, it always dominates the conversation for at least the first couple of days. And many years after, when people are arguing about it still on Twitter, they're like, well, how can you say this movie's bad? It got 63% on Rotten Tomatoes. See, people love it. But yeah, all that coming together, I mean, what a bad week. So let's start at the beginning. Willow, removed from Disney Plus, along with the movie. Now, people were like, well, Batgirl got removed. The difference is, yeah, Batgirl was cancelled as a tax write-off. You can't get a tax write-off for Willow because it's been released. And I still don't get the idea behind releasing Willow. I mean, me, you, Ryan Airy, Philip Molina, we're all in a big group chat. And I remember just before the Willow show got released, we were all like, why have they made Willow? I mean, it's like a 40-year-old movie. I'm pretty sure it's got a Rotten Tomatoes score as well. Doesn't have a massive following, doesn't have an A-list cast member that they got back for it. And I remember saying at the time, are Disney, like, have they run out of so many ideas that they're now scraping the barrel with Willow? Now, if you're a Willow fan yet, I don't hate you. We're glad to have you. But you must admit, it was never going to be a massive hit. And I used to take the mick out of Ryan Airy because he was covering it, and then he stopped one day because the views were so bad on it that he was actually, the channel was losing money from covering it. And he was constantly getting comments saying, why did you guys stop covering Willow? And he's never going to come out and be like, because it just cost too much money, we're losing it because the show's not popular enough. But I was texting him every single day going, why did you stop covering Willow, Ryan? He just, yeah. So what were your thoughts on Willow?
I didn't bother to watch it at all.
Yeah.
I had no interest. I don't even think I've seen the original movie. I've heard it's good.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
I've heard it's good, but the fan base around it was just one of those things where you can tell that there are a lot of people. I think especially on my end, it might not look like what if like putting together an episode reaction that actually takes quite a bit of time to like put one of those.
You work a lot of hours, yeah.
It's a lot of hours, but from the outs, but the point of my videos is it's supposed to look like there's no work going. Like that's the big part of my video. It's supposed to look, but really the whole assembly process is very time consuming. And I didn't bother to cover Willow. I am surprised by, because when I look through the list, I was looking through the list while you were talking, and I was definitely paying attention the entire time, Paul. I
feel like I've talked far too much on this podcast, by the way. You'll find it integrate.
It's harder to interrupt when we are internet talking to each other, because I'm like, what is the lag here on an interruption? So that's why, we'll figure it out. So you
just let me sit and go blah, blah, blah.
And it's either going to be Paul talks too much or Greg is way too quiet on this podcast. It's going to be one of the two responses. But Willow is the one that surprises me because they promoted the shit out of that. They threw down so much money to not only put it together, but they really, really promoted it. They really wanted eyes on this thing. And then to like hide it in their... There's a thing called like a Disney vault, isn't there? Is it? Like, I don't know if like a Star Wars holiday special belongs in that Disney vault now.
Yeah. But. So what they used to do was they'd release movies on like VHS or DVD or something, and they'd then put them in the Disney vault, where they just stopped producing them. You couldn't get your hands on them, and it was, I think, the Weekly Planet talked about it this week as well. Go check out their podcast.
They're the
But
best.
it created this artificial scarcity where when they re-released it, you're like, oh shit. And I buy a lot of 4Ks. I buy a hell of a lot of 4K Blu-rays, like maybe 2 a week. And I'm always looking for titles to be released on it. So I totally get why they did it. But the thing is with streaming is that I don't know if you can really remove it and create this scarcity, especially now with the internet. I mean, you can probably download anything that you want. Whereas back in the past when you had to buy physical media, you had to get your hands on it. Whereas I don't think they can really do that anymore.
And there's no physical media for any of these. I think it's shit, like what's happening for everyone.
Has it been a year that it's been out yet?
No, God, no. I don't think it's anywhere near. Wasn't it this year when it came out? My recollection. No, it must have been before Mandalorian. My recollection of. I don't think it's been a year though, but I think beyond Willow, it's like every one of the shows. Like there's a big part of the writer's strike. One of the elements of the writer's strike has to do with how writers and creators are paid when it comes to doing a streamer. And one of the compensation factors is, well, even if it doesn't get renewed, because there's a lot of shows that will go on network television, never to see the light of day again, that get canceled after a few episodes, and you never get to see it. I have tried finding the follow-up to Friends Joey countless times, and I cannot get my hands on a proper copy of Joey.
That's crazy.
I haven't tried the torrent for it. I want to get like a DVD copy at least.
Yeah.
But for these guys, they already get paid shit. For at least most of them, they get paid shit. And the one thing they can be at least guaranteed is, at least we get like the permanent exposure for it to be up on these streamers. And now they don't even get that satisfaction. They put in like so much work to just get tossed to the side. And to me, that is kind of hurtful. It's messed up to do that. I don't even quite understand. Is it like some type of quality control of people? Because is it part of I don't understand the mentality. Do you know any like analytic algorithm deep dive into why they remove it for? Because I don't know how it's affecting the streamer by keeping it up there.
I don't know what the server costs are, but I can't imagine 6 episodes of Willow is a massive cost. And obviously they removed lots of other shows. Like I think there was 50 shows removed. One of them was Jeff Goldblum's documentary, which I actually watched all the way through. Quite enjoyed that.
The World According to Jeff Goldblum?
Yeah, it was good. That was one of like the first documentaries on Disney Plus, I think, as well.
That was one of their big promo ones, yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird to see these things getting removed, and there's not an explanation for it really. Because why do you need to remove it from a streamer that you own? And the only reason would be server costs, but I can't see that being a massive saving.
No,
just
especially if no one's watching it.
Tell someone they're not getting a bonus this year. Someone at the top with who we're going to put red eyes on in the thumbnail. No, not naming any names. So Willow was removed from Disney Plus. The Star Wars park thing closed down. Now, what are your thoughts on the park? Have you been to Disneyland before?
Of course, yeah. Have you? Is there a Disneyland?
Of course. I've never been. Yeah. No. They ain't got that in the UK. You've got
they don't have a Disneyland in the UK?
No, the closest one's Paris.
Wow, really? You guys don't get one?
Yeah. No, we never got one.
Oh.
Never deserved it. I suppose we have Buckingham
Kathleen
Palace.
Kennedy, man.
Yeah, it's her fault. That's why I've made 500 videos about her. So that closed down. What do you think the reason that people just weren't going to that? Obviously, was it made before the pandemic, or was that during, or was it after? I don't know. We should have researched this.
I don't know. It sounds like it's just too much. Like there's only so much money you can. You need to find that great middle ground especially with Disney, because Disneyland is notoriously expensive for just like admission, and
England
everything
can't
in the
even
park
afford
is
it. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
People in England can't even afford it, so they've just never built one here.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so
you got to come to the US. We're better.
I was
USA.
So I was. Yeah, they probably are. And I was reading that
America.
it was 48 hours. That was the longest trip you could buy there. Like, that's
To
it.
the
You get
hotel?
48 hours. Yeah. So you
Oh,
pay the money. No, not at Disneyland. I'm talking about the Star Wars thing.
yeah. This is what happens when we try to podcast via the internet.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're on
But
the
yeah.
same page. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Because I was
Yeah.
about to kick you there. Shut the
Yeah.
podcast down. So yeah, something like it was you get 48 hours on the cruiser, but the first 5 hours or whatever are checking in. Obviously, you're going to sleep as well, and stuff's going to close for the night. So it's not really 48 hours, and for the price you're paying, it's quite expensive. And also, another criticism I've seen, it's the sequel trilogy, which no one cares about.
Oh, really? I haven't
Yeah,
looked much into it. Oh, yeah, that's
yeah,
a bummer. That's one of the
yeah.
parts about Galaxy's Edge that's not because they have the park in Disneyland. I'm sure it's
Mm,
cooler in Florida where it's Disney World, like we have Disneyland out here, which is like a junior version, I
okay.
think. And I love Disneyland, I do, but I don't really even care for Galaxy's Edge because it all just
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's nothing really that exciting to me about walking around, you know, the sands of Tatooine, like when you're looking at just basic architecture, and then a lot of it is the performers are placating to the sequel trilogy as well.
Yeah,
Like,
that
like
was
I don't
it.
hate the sequel trilogy as much as most people. But yeah, man, like if I'm gonna be here, I want to see people being Luke Skywalker. I want to see Darth Vader. I want to see some Yoda. I don't even get a little jazz about seeing more Mandalorian, but yeah, there's like it mainly does go to service the Disney sequels. So yeah, I don't even really care for Galaxy's Edge. But they do have a ride there called Rise of the Resistance that I hear is freaking awesome. I
Okay.
can't believe you haven't been to Disneyland, man. I think you'd actually really like. You got a family. You would love
Yeah,
Disneyland.
I probably would, but they're charging $5,000 a cocktail. You know what I mean? I ain't going
You
to
can
that.
afford it. I've seen your
I'll take my kid
RoboCop
to the
views.
park for free.
You can do
Um,
it, man.
yeah. I mean, we probably will go one day. It's just kind of, a group were, and by the time I made it big, I had kids. You see what I'm saying? So it's like this weird time of never worked out for me. And I'll probably get like the crap beaten out of me because as soon as I arrive at the park, they'll go, "There's that guy who made 500 thumbnails about Kathleen Kennedy with red eyes. Get him." Um,
Oh,
so that was
it would
that
be.
was quite bad. I mean, this is like $1 billion investment, and I don't think that it's been open that long. And for that to close down, that's pretty bad. See, a lot of people don't realize with Disney is if a movie doesn't do well, there's other ways that they can recoup money. And if it does do well, they also have those ways as well. And the way that they
Mhm.
do it is through merchandise, toys, but also these theme parks. So, say, Rise of Skywalker, I don't think it passed 1 billion. It came very close, but it didn't. But if you build out hype from that and create a park, this big thing at a park where people who watch that movie then go and spend $5,000 on a cocktail or something, then you're gonna make money from it. But the fact that their stuff's bombing more regularly and isn't as popular, that is having a knock-on effect on the merchandise. It's having a knock-on effect on the parks,
Yeah.
and they are really starting to be hit financially with it. And obviously this whole thing with the park, they've spent so much money on it. They won't have made that back in the time that it's been open.
Mm.
Um, and that's a big L. I actually think that's the biggest L out of all of these. Not Willow getting pulled from Disney Plus, not the Indiana Jones score. I think this is the biggest L, and it's quite a bad one.
I think I would agree with you. That's the biggest L because yeah, I was thinking
Yeah,
about how at least with you have you seen the movie Waterworld? You should do a breakdown, Paul.
yeah. I love
Um,
Waterworld. Genuinely like it.
it was a massive flop. That movie
Yeah.
did not. It was a massive flop, but at Universal Studios, and I believe even in Orlando, where the main theme park is, they have a Waterworld live action show that
Mm,
still goes to this day. It's still one of the main attractions
yeah.
out of the Universal Studios experience.
Yeah.
So even though the movie is like a massive flop, it's been like 20 something years now or whatever, and they still, one of their main attractions at Universal Studios is getting to see the same exact Waterworld show, which every time I go, it's still a fantastic show. It's still a great show. They haven't changed the script or anything, and it's still like a really, really solid show. And then they can't produce that. It's like weirdly Waterworld has had its success with that, but they can do that with this hotel, which is a much taller, glass to order here.
Yeah.
But I think the Indiana Jones one, as I'm podcast segueing us, I think the Indiana Jones one is the one that makes me the most sad. I don't know how you felt. I mean, I feel more sad for the people who all lost their creative works, now get completely shunned away. The one that bummed me out, I guess, the most was Indiana Jones, because I'm like, I'll have my own opinion when I watch it. If I end up loving it, I'll say if I love it. If I end up not liking it, it's just the lead up to it. Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Harrison Ford be so moved by how he talks about a film in so long. Didn't see it with Force Awakens. Blade Runner 2049, he seemed like he was having a blast, like having fun with Ryan Gosling, but it wasn't really about the movie. Here, he's like constantly on the record going, this is a great film. This is an amazing movie. And they nailed it. It's perfect. And James Mangold, it's strange. When you get a movie like this big of an IP, even though he's got a lot of amazing, amazing, amazing films under his belt, obviously a lot of people will, go to Logan, and he followed up with, Ford v Ferrari, which was also really good. This is the kind of thing where you can weirdly be remembered for this, where, like his
Ryan
other work
Johnson
gets discredited. Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan Johnson's made his only bad film is The Last Jedi, and that's, you bring up Ryan Johnson and people are like, oh, he made The Last Jedi, but he's made so many good films since then. And I really hope Mangold, I hope it's good for him. But it's meant to be really expensive as well. We're talking, I've seen budget estimate. They'd never released the full number, but I've seen like 350 million for it. And was right. So this whole topic is basically going around about, is Kathleen Kennedy the right person to be leading the ship at Lucasfilm? First, greenlighting Willow. I could have told you that was a bad move. The Star Wars park, setting that in the sequel trilogy instead of the original trilogy. I tell you, Greg, if it had been the original trilogy, I would have went there. I would have went to Disneyland.
Abandon your children.
Yeah, sod them. Leave them behind. It's the original trilogy. They don't know what the hell. They like Rey and stuff. What the hell are they doing?
This.
Yeah. But I mean, how many parents are interested in the sequel trilogy? The kids as well. The kids might be, but they ain't got the money to be buying a $5,000 cocktail. So that was a bad decision. Debuting Indiana Jones at Cannes, not a good decision. I personally believe. I think you're going to the wrong crowd. Cannes, it's like, do you even pronounce it Cannes or Cons? It's got that kind of aura of pretentiousness around it, where it's a French film festival. It debuts a lot of Oscar winners.
Yeah.
Is Indiana Jones, where they've got it, I don't know if this is spoiling it, because it is in the reviews, so let's say this has been, people have been allowed to talk about this. The first 25 minutes of the movie are de-aged Harrison Ford. So the entire 25
minutes?
Yeah, 25 minutes. Yeah, damn. Opening. That's why it's so expensive, because those opening 25 minutes are like an old Indiana Jones adventure where Ford's de-aged throughout all of it. I've heard that the de-aging, good on some bits, bit funny on others. Is Cannes the right place to be showing a de-aged Harrison Ford dressed up as Indiana Jones running around, with then Phoebe Waller-Bridge doing a Phoebe Waller-Bridge thing? Is that the best place to do it? Because we've been talking about reactions in this video and how you kind of want a positive reaction. So you invite all the shills. I'm looking at you, Greg. Get the shills in. He started saying bad things about Quantumania. Stop inviting them. is Cannes the
That's
best
why I can't
place
get
to do
into
it?
the flash screen. I can't have
Yeah,
the boot
exactly.
from the flash
Don't-
screen.
Him and Kevin Smith have started being critical. Get them out of here. So it was that a good decision?
No, because I think the environment of it's like I think when you go to Cannes, you're expecting shit like The Whale,
Yeah.
like these super depressing artistic films that are meant to move you to tears with its gravitas. And Indiana Jones, I don't know who I'm going to piss off with saying this, has never really been that deep of a franchise. It's just a swashbuckling archaeological adventure.
It's like a love letter. It's a love letter to the old films. Like,
yeah, it's whimsy. It's fun.
Yeah,
love it. I forgot what is that genre of old films that they hearken to. What is the exact word?
People will be writing in the comments. The three people that are still watching the video at this point, forgot what it's called. Not swashbuckling, but that word is just constantly repeating through my head. Buck Rogers.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
Doesn't matter. We'll move on. But
I
totally get what you mean.
Yeah, it's supposed to, and while they can do well, I don't know. I mean, Cannes is already losing its effect with whatever these like crazy standing ovations. I don't know who these people are who can stand for like. I would never clap beyond like a minute.
Me never. Yeah.
But people are like clapping till their hands bleed. I don't know what's going on with these film enthusiasts.
That was like the headline that Variety led with. It was like, ooh, Indiana Jones gets lukewarm 5-minute applause. It's like they were clapping for 5 minutes, and that's a bad thing. I would say that's good. But some movies, they'll put like...
their hands hurt from clapping for Johnny Depp the night before for 7 minutes. So, they got to give their hands a break.
There was some movie where it was like a 14-minute standing ovation.
I think that was Hacksaw Ridge.
Right, okay. That's pretty crazy. Please, sir, just let me get 1 minute more of clapping. That's a deep cut reference. So, yeah, just seeing the reaction. Like Harrison Ford was crying and stuff. But then you've got the Rotten Tomatoes score dropping. I think it debuted at 52% and then dropped at 33. It's on 49 now, so it's still classed as rotten. Again,
all it had to do was be better than Crystal Skull. That's all it had to do.
Yeah, it is sad to see, but what annoys me, right, is that The Last Crusade ended perfectly. Mm-hmm. What is the stereotypical Hollywood ending? Riding off into the sunset. What happens at the end of The Last Crusade? Riding off into the sunset. It's perfect. They've gone back twice.
You even get the origin of his name.
Yeah, they just... I don't get it. Well, I do get it because they've got no more new ideas, which is why they're greenlighting Willow Disney Plus shows. But it's just sad to see, your hero go out on a whimper because they're not going to make another one of these. There's no way Harrison Ford's coming back. I might literally go sign up to Rotten Tomatoes, create an account where I'm a reviewer just to get the score up 1% more, just because I feel sorry for them. I want that closer to... I mean, I think Crystal Skull's got a positive score. I love how we're also like, Rotten Tomatoes doesn't matter, but it's all we've talked about for 25 minutes. But this is showing that it does matter. But, that wasn't a good idea debuting it there. Personally, I don't think.
No, I don't think it was a good idea, but I do hear the ending of the common consensus is the first 2 hours or like hour 40, whatever, is generic Indiana Jones, but also kind of sad for some reason. And then the last half hour people are saying is gonzo. And that's where a big divide comes in. I don't know at all what they're talking about. Yeah. But everyone keeps saying that the last 20 to 30 minutes is like a make or break for you because that's when they decide to do something very weird. And it makes me want to see the movie. That hearing that last 20, 30 minutes goes, I really want to see what they do. This is probably, is this James Mangold's worst reviewed film so far?
I think so, yeah. Shocking. I can't think of maybe the Wolverine didn't do that well, but I mean that's a great film. The uncut version as well, especially, that's really really good.
I like
But
Wolverine a
so
lot.
that's 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, that's fine. So that's
Kate and
obviously Rotten
Leopold is his
Tomatoes is
lowest.
what one? Sorry.
Kate and Leopold is his lowest.
Yeah, never heard of it. Copland as well. That might be quite low.
That's
Oh, that's
75%, Paul.
75%. I
That's
remember
a
that
good
getting
movie.
ripped to shreds.
You don't like good
Yeah,
movies, man. That's a good
I
movie.
mustn't. I probably think Indiana Jones is great. But it's not a good decision to do that. And I think if this bombs, that they need to get rid of Kathleen. I don't like saying people should lose their jobs, but it gets to the point where you kind of hit. How many more chances is she going to get? Disney, they laid off 7,000 people recently because of ineptitude. Are they the reason that stuff's not doing well over there? Because when you look at the higher ups, I'm starting to think maybe these people are losing the jobs because the higher ups aren't exactly running the show that
Yeah.
well.
Everything comes
Kathleen will
down to the
be
leadership.
yeah. And is she the right person to be doing this? Because The Mandalorian season 3 as well, I heard so much stuff about that behind the scenes, what was going on. I heard like crazy things about Jon Favreau having so many good ideas that got shut down, and they were constantly trying to force Baby Yoda to be the forefront of everything. So what I got told originally was that Book of Boba Fett was going to be just the Book of Boba Fett. They started making that at the start of Mandalorian. So Mandalorian season 2 got greenlit almost instantly. They started working on that, and then season 1 dropped. They didn't realize how popular that Grogu was going to be. The guy's selling toys, he's selling theme parks, he's Disney's #1 baby. They realized that they've already, got through a lot of season 2, and at the end of it, he's going off. And oh crap, what we're going to do to get him back? We need this guy back. Get him back. So that's where the whole stuff with the Book of Boba Fett, where we get a weird segue where it tells the story of Mando going to get back Grogu. And that is why he's in season 3. And then that kind of, from what I've heard, might not be true. Take it with a pinch of salt. But that is where problems kind of arose. And it was like, you're taking away what I had, the vision I had for this show, which was Grogu's going to get trained in season 3, but they had to skip over that arc, and then the whole stuff happened with Gina, where the High Republic show got cancelled.
Mhm.
But they still had elements of that they wanted to bring across into the Mandalorian, and that's why there's weird High Republic elements in the Mandalorian season 3 as well, where we suddenly go off to Coruscant and spend 45 minutes with Dr. Pershing for something that never leads anywhere, and there's lots of weird things happening in that season. Someone is clearly friends with Lizzo as well. Someone was like, "Oh, Lizzo showed up and was like, hey, I'd love to be in one of your shows, Kathleen." He's like, "Whatever, yeah. Of course you can come down and star in it." Strange things happened, and you'll notice that Favreau's not really getting pulled into things going forward. Dave Filoni's got his future movie, but there's not that much being said about Favreau. Now, could this turn out to be untrue? Of course. We constantly hear rumors about The Mandalorian that turn out to be false. But I heard this, quite early on in the season, and then seeing it play out, I was like, you know what? Makes a lot of sense. And when you think
I
about how popular that season was, it does seem like that's kind of lost, the appeal it had as well. And I'm just
mhm.
thinking like the management, something's happened here where they're slowly running everything into the ground. And this isn't just on Star Wars. Pixar's nowhere near as popular as it used to be. Pixar is pretty much just a streaming studio now because all their
Yeah.
movies drop, bomb, and then go hit Disney Plus. Marvel's not been as popular. And there's this weird thing going on behind the scenes with it where it feels like they're kind of mishandling all their brands almost. When
Well,
you
their
look at,
stocks are tanking too. Their stocks
yeah,
are
it's
really
just
bad.
so weird. So
Well,
what
I
do you
think
think?
it's the pandemic. The way they handled the pandemic,
Hmm.
the reactionary experience.
Yeah.
Remember when Christopher Nolan was so critical of how Warner Brothers was handling the pandemic? Like I think
Yeah.
studios, they all panicked all around and tried figuring out weird ass strategies that still
There was
have
no
a
rule book.
strange ripple effect to this day that they haven't quite figured out how to handle a lot of things. And
Hmm.
especially, I remember, I think the first time it dawned on me when I was a kid was Toy Story 2. When I saw that in the movies, and then it wasn't until a year later where it came out on VHS.
Yeah.
You used to have to really wait for something to come out on physical media. And now everything abides by this 45-day window.
Yeah.
And that became even especially stringent when it came to the pandemic. Like, you don't really have to wait for anything. And, it's like we were talking about leadership. I think Bob Chapek, it's the craziest thing to me in the world how like Bob Iger did this amazing job with Disney. Like, bottom line, whatever you think about Disney's decisions, he did a stellar job with like Marvel, Star Wars picks, all the acquirements. Like, he did an excellent job. Disney Plus was off to a great success. Then he chooses Bob Chapek to be his successor, and that seemed to be his one mistake was choosing Bob Chapek. And then a bunch of bad things start happening. And you're right, like the Pixar brand especially, that's become exceptionally diluted. And Pixar used to be like monumental animation theater going experience, and we have completely lost that with it. I mean, a lot of people look at Lightyear, but Elementals as well is not tracking all that well. And I think that a lot of like the theater going experience just doesn't feel like as necessary. Even for me, I kind of got used to the pandemic, obviously, with what I do on my channel. Like, sometimes just like, screw it, I'm just going to wait till it's out on physical media or digital streaming just so I can react to it or something. Because a lot of times I don't feel as compelled to be going. But then you also look at the product of a lot of these things, and the product of a lot of things doesn't turn out that great. Like everything you were saying with Mandalorian, I think shows on screen, like I remember when we first saw Book of Boba Fett, watching it week to week, and Book of Boba Fett just wasn't going over that great after coming off the great season of season 2 of Mando. So when Mando first came in, we were all like, yes, thank you. But this is like such a relief. This is good. But then when I rewatched because I want to do a big rewatch leading into season 3, I was like, this is just strange. And it just reeks of unconfidence in your actual material that you have in the season, and it feels like a lack of direction, and it drastically, I think, did hinder the emotional journey going experience of Grogu in season 3. And I had season 3 kind of broke me. What's up?
Yeah, it just robbed the emotion at the ending of season 2 because it was wrapped up so quickly. I think another mistake they made was having Mando do 2 episodes back to back.
Yeah,
because I remember it was the same thing with the Dr. Pershing episode of The Mandalorian season 3. It's like you're watching it and you're like, what is this the same show? Because it's such a weird tonal shift. And to have that, I think one episode would have been fine, but to have the break of the week and then the next week you come back and you're like, oh, it's another Mandalorian episode, bit strange.
Yeah,
but I just think
they didn't flesh out Boba Fett. There was a lot that went wrong with that season.
Yeah.
And it shows. And I think Jon Favreau, every time you check in with him, he just looks more like heavier, more depressed. More every time you see him, he just looks more out of it. And
Kathleen's still working here.
It's Kathleen, man, pushing his freaking buttons, dude. It's Kathleen. But I think Bob Chapek was also a major factor. This is gnarly to me that it went Bob Iger. I'm retired too. He done fucked everything up. I need to step back in and fix everything.
Can you be back in the office on Monday?
Yeah, it's insanity to me. So I have a little bit of faith that they could fix it because Bob Iger's clearly not been enjoying his retirement. He's just been watching things fail.
It sucks. Like, we have that worry as well because we want to step away from this one day, but it's a case of who do I hand the reins over because, there's there's so much stuff you have to learn that you wouldn't think you have to know. So I can imagine on $1 billion company level that just handing it over to, I mean, and Chapek had been running the parks, hadn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Or he was quite high up. You would think he would be the next in line anyway, like the most obvious choice.
Sure.
But for him to still mess it up, it's weird. But
Yeah.
I think in general, obviously I collect a lot of physical media. My wall, you can't see here, lots of 4K Blu-rays, hell of a lot of comic books. I feel like streaming cheapens things,
Hmm.
and I don't know, I just don't get. I love taking something out that I think in general, just digital things cheapen things. Like, you have a relationship through the phone. You see people having happy lives on Instagram. It's not,
Podcasting.
yeah. If we were sitting next to each other in real life, we'd probably be having a great time now. You'd smell
Now
my
it's
farts and
forced.
everything. But
Yeah.
everything's kind of through it doesn't have this physical feel to it, and it does, in my opinion, it kind of cheapens things. I know people are going to be like, okay, boomer, but there's so much content at the moment. We touched upon Frank Grillo before, and I was watching an interview with him on Michael Rosenbaum's Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, and he's obviously worked for Marvel, he's worked for DC, and they got onto what the hell is happening with the MCU at the moment. And Frank was very frank about it. He was grilloing what was happening, and he was saying that he just said there's too much of it. And that that's true. There's no anticipation anymore. Do you remember how you felt waking up the morning of the WandaVision finale, getting to cover this? I was so hyped. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it. And now it's just like, oh well, it's another Disney Plus show finale. Gonna get into it. There's just been so much stuff, and I think they have greenlit far too much, and they've realized that as well, and they're slowly pulling. I think that Disney hit a point, right? Like we know lots of YouTubers who run channels, and there's this corporate mentality that more is better because more will make more money. And we know a guy who he worked for a channel for years and years and years. He built it up to be this massive thing. He had an incredible month, and the channel was owned by someone, and he was managing it, but he built it up himself. And instead of being like, "Wow, that was an amazing month," the person was like, "Why aren't you doing this every month?" And there, the corporate person's idea was, "We need to do more videos." And he was chatting with us behind the scenes and stuff, and asking what our advice was, and we all said, you need to explain to this guy that more videos doesn't mean more views. You're going to dilute the brand. There's going to be too much for people to watch, and it's difficult to have people constantly coming back all the time. Like, I'm doing a hell of a lot longer videos now, and one of my big worries is these videos are too long for people to watch more than one a week. And I do see it sometimes in the views, and I think, oh, I made the wrong decision there. But you know, are self-employed. We make mistakes, and uh, Disney, I think, have done a similar thing where the MCU's been so popular. They Chapek's come in and being like, you guys need to make more of this. There was very much a phase four mentality where I think Marvel thought everything we put out is a banger. We made Guardians of the Galaxy popular. Let's make a show for every single character, make as much money as we can. And the entire time they weren't thinking this is oversaturating the brand and it's not making things special anymore. And
Yeah.
Frank Grillo was saying there's just too much. Which
Well, I the at first I was like, I don't know, maybe it'll be fine, because but then as things started to happen, what I didn't factor in, and maybe you know, there's a lot of negative rhetoric around Echo season 1 getting
yeah.
everything dropped at once. And maybe it's true. Frankly, that's where my mind went. Like, they must want people to really forget about this shit as soon as it's like, that's where
Mm,
my mind did go, that it might be like really bad.
yeah.
However, what a big thing is, you got to miss something so that way you haven't. And nothing drives more viewership, I think, and butts in the seats than creating great anticipation. Like that when they say sell the sizzle, not the steak, that feeling of anticipate. I think that's why our trailer, like why trailers do so well, is because that's a feeling that people, a lot of times when something comes out, we stop talking about it. It's just the way it goes. Something's out, we talk about it for the weekend, then it's done. But a trailer creates a conversation and hype and anticipation. And when you don't get time away, and especially if not every product is like a banger, if every product is like, it's just mid now compared, because before, how would I put it? We had so many movies. It's not just we're getting so many movies. It's movies and shows. So that's even more time. If we're getting like 3 shows and 3 movies a year, that is way more time committed than 6 movies in a year. Because now you're spending like weeks with one property, and then now it's like move on to the next. Then weeks with a property, then move on to the next. So you get even less time to miss the Marvel Cinematic Universe because you are committing to these television shows now. So I do wonder if the Echo series has something to maybe do with that, because they are like releasing Marvels around the same time, and Loki as well. There's a lot coming out. So as opposed to making you feel like, but then again, I'm also going, maybe it's just because Echo might not be good, and they just want people to kind of forget about it. And they might have seen like there are some shows that just don't have the week to week value. So yeah, I think because they didn't factor in that when you're doing all the shows as well, you're especially not going to give people a chance to miss it. If it was like only movies, it might still be a lot, but it's very different feeling than when you have to consume 8 to 10 hours of television as well.
Yeah, now they released some finales on the same week as they released movies as well. I'm like 100% sure that the Hawkeye finale released the same week as No Way Home, because there were people saying, do you think Spider-Man's going to swing by the Hawkeye finale? Because they're both set in the same place. I'm like, no, you idiot. They're not going to waste a appearance of Spider-Man on that, because Sony only let them have him for about 6 projects or something. But that, at the time, being like, an MCU thing on Wednesday, an MCU movie on Thursday, it feels more draining for people, I think, that they're having to organize their lives around these films when it should be, oh man, I haven't seen this for so long, I can't wait to do it. And it's like, oh, I've got to watch this thing to keep up. It's a bit of a chore. And they've had so many projects where the people aren't big names. I genuinely think in Phase 4, I think Guardians of the Galaxy was one of the best things to happen to Marvel, and it was one of the worst things to happen to Marvel, because it showed that they can take any character and make them, a big name, which is a good thing, obviously. But the bad thing that comes from that is that, you can't take every single character every single time and just have nothing but D-listers constantly rolling out all the time. Like people say, Iron Man was a C-lister and stuff. The original Avengers team, there were some C-listers amongst them, but there was also the big names as well. Incredible Hulk, that is a big name. Massive in the 70s, the TV show. That guy can sell solo movies himself. Universal haven't used him properly, but there was a reason that Universal just bought the rights to the Hulk and not the other Marvel characters, because the Hulk can sell, he is a big name.
He's like
Captain America, massive name. So, Thor, Iron Man, they weren't massive ones. They were your C-lister sort of things, but they were packaged in this big team up with these household names of Captain America and the Hulk. Now, you look at the other stuff that's been, Ms. Marvel's not a household name. Agatha Harkness isn't a household name. Echo's not a household name. Hawkeye, at this point, yeah, but then you're saying, well, it's actually Hawkeye Jr. I think Haley Steinfeld's a bigger name than Hawkeye. But it's not. It's difficult. They feel like rather than spacing out these lesser known characters and padding them amongst the big names, they're instead saying, no, you're going to get lots of lesser known characters and you're going to get to love them. And people don't care that much. They're interested in the overarching story, which is why things like Captain Marvel can come out and do $1 billion, because it's sandwiched really nicely in between Infinity War and Endgame. But we don't feel like we're building to anything at the moment. I know we've got the Kang Dynasty coming, but there's not that massive killer thing. And I think it was a mistake to not have Phase 4 end with an Avengers movie. I know, part of the narrative is they're taking a break from Avengers movies because the Avengers aren't assembled at the moment. But you kind of need this uniting force to make you feel like, oh, well, I need to watch these lesser known characters.
Well, you
And
see,
once,
what you just said about that, sorry to interrupt, that what you said about that, is I've heard like Kevin Feige or someone said that, right, about Avengers not being assembled at the moment. The movies haven't made that clear.
yeah,
Because the last time we saw Avengers, they were all fucking together. Like every single one of them was an Endgame. It was massive. And
yeah,
this idea that they're not assembled together is not something that has been made clear to the audience, I think. Like they even bring up the Avengers sometimes. And so that's a big part of what I think is also missing is that when you train your audience for connectivity, and then you start seeing that none of that's like that's eventually leading to something and that's why they had to announce shit. But it doesn't.
yeah,
But I think they need to kind of make that a little bit. Some of the things they need to clear us in on, and what you're talking about Guardians as well, is that one of the lessons they did not take from it was, and you could kind of see it with Avengers and Age of Ultron, is how if the first Avengers movie felt. It's still a committee movie, but it still really felt like they let Joss Whedon actually have a little bit more reign. And then you see Age of Ultron, which felt more like committee interfering, and that's a movie that destroyed Joss Whedon. And James Gunn, it takes these like characters who are not as well known, but they really let him have his own voice with it.
yeah,
And I think that's something that's missing when you're taking a lot of these. It's like famously, Edgar Wright walked away from Ant-Man because of what was happening there. And I don't really know what Peyton Reed's unique voice honestly is. I don't.
yeah.
It doesn't really show, even though he's directed all three. I don't know what his unique voice truly is. And I think even with some of these movies and shows, like I think Miss Marvel was really doing. I actually there's a lot about Miss Marvel that I really liked, and I think the first
It's really
couple
good.
episodes had a really unique voice, especially. Like that's where I felt they let the guys who got fired from Batgirl. Those guys, I think they really let their voices shine. And then you get something like She-Hulk where it's kind of split.
Yeah,
And you're like,
She-Hulk was.
I don't have I can feel that they want to have their voice, but they're also being kind of told how to do this. And that's why I was okay with the finale, especially because it was like, well, fuck it, they're kind of going hog wild here, so just at least that's different, So,
Yeah,
and I think that's a lesson that a lot of them don't really embrace, is let them have their own voice. And I think that's where Quantumania also especially failed with audiences. It's
yeah,
just you're starting to feel these movies that feel like ChatGPT wrote them,
yeah. And that kind of takes us on to our next topic, which is Jeff Loveness apparently out of Kang Dynasty,
Hell yeah.
which I
It's all his fault. All his fault. That
yeah,
Ant-Man.
that's what I was gonna say next. I feel like he's been made to be the fall guy. I think so Ant-Man
The
came out
same
on
way
Disney.
Michael Waldron was made to be the fall guy for
Oh, yeah.
Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, it's crazy to me when people are like, "Oh, Waldron ruined it. He took Sam Raimi's he took the original script that Scott Derrickson had and he rewrote it and ruined it." And it's like, well, do you not think it's the studio who like greenlit that and got him to redo the script that also takes some blame in it? Like there's people who, Sam Raimi admitted to not watching WandaVision or something, and I'm like, you're directing the sequel to that. But
Yeah.
I like Multiverse of Madness.
I like
I
Multiverse
scored
of
it
Madness,
a 9 out of 10 or something at the time, and
Yeah.
I will defend that movie to the grave. I think it
I
does
like
a
it a
lot
lot.
of big things, and people aren't hip to it. They're not hip to that style. But Waldron, sorry,
Loveness.
Jeff Loveness, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
my bad. He's taking so much slack for Quantumania, and so I rewatched it on Disney Plus last week with the IMAX thing. The 4K Blu-ray came yesterday. Finished watching it today. There's not good things, there's issues with it, right? But
Sure.
the Kang scenes, I think, are really well written. They're very tense. They've got a great under that one with Michelle Pfeiffer and Jonathan Majors where they rebuild the ship and she's kind
Hmm.
of telling the story. I think that's one of the better scenes that we've had in the MCU for a long time. There's
Definitely.
just a very good undercurrent to it of you can kind of with her discovering Kang's a villain, it works really well. Anyone who comes out of that movie, you know, you speak to them, even if they hate it, they'll still say that scene is good. So I
Hmm.
can totally see why they had him to write Kang Dynasty. Now he's not out officially yet, but it's looking that way. He's just taking the flak for all this. I think he's done better than what I've seen from Peyton Reed. I mean, I didn't really like Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought the first Ant-Man was great, but you can kind of see that Edgar Wright did a lot of the groundwork for that. But he's Peyton Reed's fine, and to me, the buck stops with him. You either, you know, the script can take you to a certain point, and then you kind of figure out what works and that what doesn't. I mean, there's so many directors who've taken scripts and been like, well, we'll cut this, we'll edit this out, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So
Um,
it's sad to see him kind of taking the heat for everything. Do you
it's
remember
weird
that he
when you.
bought that fan a ticket for Quantum Mania? It was like, oh, I can't afford to
Yeah.
go and see it. And Jeff Loveness was like, don't worry, I'll buy you a ticket so you can go check out the movie. That seemed like a nice guy thing to do. Doesn't negate that there's problems with Quantum Mania, but for him to be, you know, the public enemy number one right now is pretty crazy to me.
Well, that's the shitty part about being a writer.
Mm,
Honestly, if the movie was really well received, I don't think anyone would talk about how great the script is. Like
yeah.
no one ever really does. They talk about the director and how great the
Mm,
director did. But then when a director, and I'm not saying it's only the director's fault. Like clearly, there's a lot of factors at play here that are, the studio interference and the committee making a movie rhetoric that goes around with these films. But at the same time, writers rarely are the ones who are credited unless
yeah.
they wrote and directed the movie. They are rarely the ones who are credited. Unless you're like Aaron Sorkin or something, where like the script really sings through
Yeah.
but most of the time they're not, and most of the time it's the director gets all the credit. And a lot of times, if a movie sucks, they blame the writer.
Yeah.
So it's a sad thing, and a lot of people don't realize like these movies go through, especially it's not like some independent film or a mid-budget film. This is a massive blockbuster, so they go through so many different stages post the screenplay. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of like crazy, they talk about the VFX artists who are constantly being like drilled and having to rework shit, and that happens all the time too
Mm,
with these big movies. Is they're constantly being told to rewrite stuff and change stuff. It's a part of the movie making game, even on smaller films. You got to keep rewriting and keep rewriting. The script never really ends, but a lot of times it's like, who's giving this note to change it? Who's trying to like fix it? Like, I don't think. I think at least there was a consistent voice with Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I think Peyton Reed's voice, whatever that might be, is not present at all in Quantumania. Like, I don't know what this distinct vision is that he could have for it. And Jeff Loveness to be getting all this slack for it. I'm like, guys, there's so much that went wrong with this
yeah.
movie. It has not come down to just freaking Jeff Loveness's script. Was the script like, what was that first script that they decided to go with? And maybe that was great, but so many things change along the way, and they often change things while they're directing it, while they're editing it. There's a lot that factors into it, and to just
Yeah.
blame it on the screenplay itself is like, yeah, the screenplay that I saw was not great, but he is not solely responsible for it, and that is not the thing that I don't know. I just can't, like, even with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. One of the writers on it is David Coep, who's written a
Mm,
lot of amazing films. I believe he's the writer for Jurassic Park.
yeah.
And so his guys are in some great shit, but once in a while, it doesn't come
Studio
down to,
interference. Yeah.
there's a lot that happens, man, and it
But
sucks
yeah.
for the guy. It
Well,
sucks.
they say a movie's made three times: once on the page, once on the set, and once in the edit.
Hmm.
And he shows a factor, but what are your problems with Quantum Mania? For me, it's the third act where stuff just kind of devolves into the usual stuff of Marvel, which is that to me that's on Marvel because they do that sort of trope so many times where it's like we need to ramp things up to a big battle. one of the best endings, I think, to a Marvel film is Doctor Strange, where they don't do that and they just have Strange going head to head with Dormammu. He figures out a way to trick him and torture him by keeping him in a loop of time until he gives up and it's a draw. That is clever to me. But Shang-Chi as well, I think the third act of that just kind of love it up to that point, but then it just kind of goes into weird. The Underdwellers here, Quantumania, I just kind of feel it turns into trying to be a New Hope. Doesn't really work that well. And originally they did have a different ending where Kang won. And this has been said so many times that it's not officially verified, but when you get sent a plot leak and 90% of it is right up until that ending, then there has to be some weight and merit to it. And we do know that the film was reshot because we've seen what originally was there behind the scenes stuff. So I think that the problems that film has are sort of the ending. I think the first act's really good when, Scott's narrating his life and stuff and everything seems great. And then when they go into the quantum realm, kind of falls apart. MODOK, what the hell is going on with MODOK? When they send, it's the probability realm. They send Scott into that. I think that's a great scene, but the way that they handle the resolution of it, of shoot that thing to make it smaller, didn't work. Just shoot it again. I think that's weak. And then it kind of goes into this third act thing where it's everyone just going all out with these characters that you don't really care about. The whole Rebels thing doesn't really work from that point onwards for me. So,
well, I think the effect of Quantumania, why it really is bothersome, is because that third act after pretty much like right after the probability realm sequence and moving forward, is it actually negatively affects the acts that came before it, with realizing there's not much impact or weight with anything that came before it.
Yeah.
Where it's not like how I talk about the Wolverine movie, where you're like, those first two acts are amazing, and then the third act, this is a wonky third act. But like, I still walk away with the Wolverine's first two acts as like, I really enjoyed that experience. Third act a little weird. I really enjoyed it. Same thing with Wonder Woman, right? But the Quantumania kind of makes the whole thing, when you look back on it, feel like weightless the entire time.
Which I think's more of a, trope of the genre more than Loveness writing a bad third act. I think he probably just got told like, just whatever, just make a big fight scene, just have Cassie get big because she needs to learn how to do this, have her beat MODOK, have whatever. I don't think that's so much on Loveness, to be honest. I think that's a lot of different factors. Like, one of my big things with the film is that it looks like it's just really shot on a green screen. If you compare it to Avatar 2, that feels like a lived-in world. And though it's all CGI, it feels like the characters are actually moving around and interacting with that world. And then you move over to Quantumania, which it just feels like everyone's standing in front of a green screen. And in the background,
Michael Douglas, man.
That ain't, he doesn't even look like he's on set. That ain't to do with Jeff Loveness. That ain't nothing to do with him. So lay off the guy. Leave Jeff Loveness alone. But apparently he's been taken off Kang Dynasty. And I think this spells that we're going to get lots of delays with Marvel coming up. They might even change direction.
They can't rewrite it. They can't do anything.
But that kind of takes us into Jonathan Majors as well, which is another big problem for Marvel at the moment. Though they've never really addressed it. Apparently, he got taken off the marketing for Quantumania. I mean, he's on the Steelbook. But apparently they've really downplayed that he's in the film. And for this guy to be such a big part of the phase going forward. I mean, we're going to see him again this year as Kang in Loki. And he's apparently playing multiple parts. You got the post-credit scene at the end of Quantumania where he's playing Victor Timely, but that's one version of Kang that's going to appear. He's not going to be the only person that appears. They're going to have so many different versions of him. And the fact that they have a date locked for Loki season 2, that says to me that they're not reshooting. They know it's coming out this time, so Kang will be played by Jonathan Majors. And now I kind of feel like they've looked at the whole Ezra Miller situation and sort of seen that people they say they care on Twitter, but when it comes down to it, people are still going to watch it. Papa John's, yeah. Papa John's said a lot of bad things, mate. But sometimes, yeah, I buy Papa John's pizza when I feel like a nice little pizza. You know what I'm saying? You got to separate the dough from the man. And I think that they've seen with Ezra Miller that as outraged as people are on Twitter, it's not worth completely scrapping these things. It's not worth doing what they did with, like, at the start of the Me Too movement, there was so many people fired. And Hollywood would have lost a lot of money doing that because they would have had to reschedule things, recast things, getting audition people and stuff like that. And I think they've seen with Ezra that Warner Brothers just kept quiet, haven't changed a thing, and they've realized that as crazy as Twitter is and seems all manic, that we might not have to do anything. We'll see how things play out, but we can probably still get away with releasing Loki season 2 because it's been filmed. And one of the big defenses of The Flash, when people are like, why haven't they reshot this? The big defense is like, well, it's so difficult to reshoot that movie. It would cost so much money that they're just gonna put it out there. And I think Loki season 2, they're just gonna keep things as they are. Majors is still gonna go through his stuff. He's not getting into the limelight for a long time. They're doing what they did with Ezra, where he's not going on press tours. We're not gonna be interviewing the guy. They're just keeping him away from the production. Probably the marketing is going to be heavily focused on Loki, and that'll be it. So what do they do, Greg? Kang Dynasty. Did you see the other day that there was a statement put out saying, well, Kang, we weren't building the next phase around him. Actually, there was some person at Marvel who said that Kang was never fully meant to be the focus, which is complete gaslighting. Because I tell you, the guy was definitely meant to be the focus when you call them films Kang Dynasty and, Secret Wars. So people have taken that to be like, well, they might be introducing Doctor Doom or something because he was originally the person behind the Secret Wars that they're basing things on. So what do they do? Do they keep Majors even if he's found guilty, or do they recast, or do they make it a different villain?
I think Marvel finally learned something from DC with how they're handling this. It's the first thing I'm thinking. I think if Kang is found guilty, if Jonathan Majors is found guilty, 100% they should recast. If he's found guilty, like, yeah, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, they should totally recast him. I don't think you need to, because at the end of the day, I feel like you could still recast Kang. I think you can definitely
do character for it as well.
That's it, like he is just the whole idea behind him is variance, and you don't even have to you don't even have to go down the route of like explaining any of that shit. Just get a different guy. Like you can do it. You can absolutely do it, and I think it would be more distracting if Jonathan Majors was like a massive A-lister at first, and then they put him in there. But a lot of people became familiar with Jonathan Majors through Kang the Conqueror. And if you look at his screen time that we've had with him so much, it's really not as much as people probably think. Like, he's made an impact, but it's not as much as people actually think we've spent with Kang the Conqueror. So, and on top of that too, Kang got his ass whooped in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Yeah, ridiculous.
But by the very end of the film, and so we got rid of that Kang, and then you could just we had the whole Coliseum effect, and it was all obviously Jonathan Majors, and sure, we'll see him in Loki season 2. It wouldn't be that difficult, I think, for people to readjust, considering the fact that we have. While they have established that like all the variants apparently look like Jonathan Majors, we've also established that there can be variants that don't look like Jonathan Majors. They don't even have to go down the variants path. I think there's already like they already established that there's so many Spider-Man variants and none of them look alike. Like
one's a 45-year-old man.
Exactly. So you can do the same thing with Jonathan Majors, where you don't even have to explain. You don't even have to try to explain it away. You don't even have to try anything. I think you can definitely just recast him. I think there is so much. It's a fascinating thing to see what's happening with Jonathan Majors, because it was peak, like
Humble.
peak stardom. You know, 2 #1 hits in a row where he is the antagonist and he is the talk of the movie. Both movies in a row where he steals the show from the main character.
Yeah,
both movies. And then to have this downfall is crazy. And yeah, innocent till proven guilty, all that jazz. There's so much surrounding this right now, though, and I think he is lucky that like, yeah, we're gonna fire the writer of Kang Dynasty, so this is gonna get even more delayed. So it's gonna give you time to buy yourself out of this situation.
Yeah,
I think too, weirdly, another effect that could happen, because even on my end, as someone who's done like some Ezra Miller videos, I have found myself going, I wonder what their performance is going to be like. I get more curious about it. I do.
That's
and
why
I think
it sucks.
And I think with Jonathan Majors, it might work better to its effect that you don't promote him in Loki season 2, because when he shows up, you'll just see him as Kang the Conqueror, and you won't have that association. You'll be even more excited that he's there. So I think it'll actually work in their favor.
Because I mean, he's such a good actor that
He's great.
like why I'm saying like it sucks and stuff. I'm not saying it's sad because like this guy's getting done for stuff. Like obviously, man, if it comes out that he did it really bad, and what's sad is that you're gonna be because he's a brilliant actor. You cannot take that away from him. And what's sad is that you're gonna be watching this thinking, man, he's really good, but I feel bad because he's this horrendous person. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Sure.
it's difficult to fully switch your brain off to it and enjoy it when it's got this air of, and this happens. Knowing things behind the scenes can always affect the way you view things. Like Ahsoka is going to be very difficult to watch for a different reason, which is the passing of Ray Stevenson. And then Loki season 2 is going to be difficult to watch because you know all the stuff that's gone on behind the scenes with that as well. And it's all like, I try and stay away from this stuff. I kind of learned my lesson by covering the Johnny Depp trial, and there was so much, there was lots of crazy things going on with that, and I wish that I hadn't really waded into it. And now I'll get people messaging going, how come you don't cover Ezra Miller? How come you don't cover Jonathan Majors? And I'll say like, oh well, I'm just kind of staying away from that. And they'll go,
the views won't be as good.
Well, exactly. But I mean, there hits a point where it's, even if you were getting views, it's not worth it. And there'll be people who are like, well, I'll say, look, I'm just not covering it. And they'll go, but you covered Johnny Depp. And it's like, well, I kind of learned the lesson from covering that trial, that there's just, I shouldn't personally wade in on this stuff because everyone has so much baggage with it. And you see the baggage with Jonathan Majors as well, where, there's people talking about, there's people who think that he's being framed by Hollywood because he's a successful black man. There's people who think that he's a target of these women who want revenge. There's people who think that he's a high profile man, so he's getting away with taking things out on women. There's the Marvel fans who are like, oh, we want Kang, we don't care what he does. Like, everyone has so much baggage with it that I don't feel like I can accurately represent those feelings and come off where I don't sound like an idiot, because there's so much stuff to wade into, which is why I don't talk about it, except for like these 20 minutes on this podcast. But I said this yesterday on Twitter. If they can recast House of the Dragon, the two main characters in that, during the season,
really quick. I mean,
they can recast anyone.
Sorry to interrupt you on this. It's that the thing, though, too, when you to come to your defense a little bit here, is that when you're covering the Johnny Depp stuff, that was a trial. There was like actual
wasn't trial
information by and documentation and witness testimony that was being publicly presented. Because like I've done a couple of videos about Jonathan Majors. I don't go like hardcore serious in them. Same thing with Ezra Miller. I've given my opinions about everything that's come out, but I've skipped a lot of Ezra Miller stuff, and I've skipped a lot of Jonathan Majors stuff too. Because it gets to a point where you're like, well, I've already said what like here's how I'll feel if this happens. Here's how I'll feel if this happens. But then in the day, I'm like, well, now it's at a point where we just got to kind of wait to see what happens, like what really happens now, other than just what's, just being speculated on. And so, yeah, that is different especially for like your kind of channel, which is so much about like getting the fucking information and people rely on you for that. Yeah, it is different to cover that instead of like the Johnny Depp trial.
And even like the Will Smith slap stuff. I know there was people at New Rock Stars who wanted to cover that, and they didn't. And looking back, I think that was the right decision, not for them. Like, they shouldn't cover it. Not to be like, you can't cover it. But I think again, that came with so much baggage. I remember when I covered that and was talking about it, I played a clip from a guy who was kind of just talking about his thoughts on it. I was like, well, here's what this guy thought, not thinking that the guy who was saying it was black. And then I had people messaging me going, well, you've used him because you feel like you're propping up him as the only voice that can speak on the situation because of his skin color. And I'm like, I didn't think of that at all. He just offered an interesting and well thought out opinion. And I think people do bring their baggage with this stuff, that to the point where it's difficult to navigate it. It's a lot easier for me to talk about an Easter egg in a comic book show than it is to break down all of the things behind what's happening with Jonathan Majors right now. But I think, people who are like, well, you can't recast. I think you can. I think you can recast anyone. I mean, Harrison Ford's he's taken over William Hurt. And I also think that people turn a blind eye to certain things. Like, there's some stuff with William Hurt. I remember saying, when he died, I remember saying rest in peace. And instantly I was getting hit with tweets saying, well, didn't you know he did this? And it's like, it's very difficult to navigate without you getting pulled into a lot of the negative things that people have done. And
I think Marvel's playing it smart though. Honestly, and all things considered, they're actually taking the best route right now.
They're just waiting and seeing, yeah.
Not. If you remember, like the whole James Gunn thing, they fired the guy.
Crazy.
And then
how
they
much
were
did
like,
that mess up?
Shit, you want to come back? And here, it's like, yeah, there'll be an official verdict within court, and then there'll be the court of public opinion, and because some stuff will come out, and we'll see. It's like OJ was deemed innocent, but everyone thinks he's guilty. So if that's like, it could be a similar thing where like, let's see how many people like in public opinion, and I'm not just saying that because OJ's black. I'm just saying that that's what happens sometimes. And sometimes people are proven innocent in court, but then in court of public opinion, too many people still are against them, right? And that could be a case for Jonathan Majors, or it might be, no, man, this is what happened there that does show that Jonathan Majors is actually innocent. So they are actually taking the smartest route right now, instead of just firing him and like just kind of hiding his name in promotions is the best thing you can really do, and waiting for the trial to play out.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying with Me Too. There was studios, even an accusation. I mean, there was that guy who got fired from some studio because the staff were saying he hugs people quite a lot and he's a bit kind of creepy, which I don't think he'd actually.
Guy?
Might be, yeah.
I think it was John. Was John Landis? I forget. Not John Landis.
I mean, I don't want you to say who it is, and it's someone who's done something really horrible, and I'm sitting here going, yeah, that great guy, great guy. But there was definitely some people who got fired for stuff that was, you know what I mean? It was a bit like overreactive. Like,
sure.
There's so many people that I feel like it'll kick off if I get into it. But there's so many people who they reacted very quickly to. And I think when Warner Brothers did the whole thing with Ezra, where they were just saying, oh, whatever, just never going to acknowledge it. Pretended Flash is coming out. We've shown it to Stephen King and he loves it. I think when they saw that worked and that it's not really had a massive negative effect on the film, that they've just thought, well, it's pointless announcing things now. Look how much firing James Gunn messed us up as a studio, because that did have such a knock-on effect. Thor and Guardians had to switch release orders, and they were having to divert plots from certain films into others to cover that. And it was a mess. I can imagine it was a big scramble behind the scenes. especially for them to get to the point where they had to go back and rehire him. And he of course in that time when he was, didn't have a job, where did he go work at? The bloody competition and he's now going to be running as the main competitor to your universe. So I think they learned their lesson from that as well and thought, well, if we get rid of Majors,
he might go
Warner
to DC.
Brothers Warner Brothers is just going to hire him anyway. They've seen with Ezra, they can just do what they want. So yeah, it's a very, very difficult situation to navigate, but we'll see how it goes. When is the trial? Very soon, isn't it?
I think it's not till, I might be getting confused with the writer's strike. I think it is either June or July, but it's definitely soon. It's really soon.
It's the same day as Loki season 2 releases. Yeah, but moving on to the next topic. So yeah, that kind of takes us into the writer's strike in general, which is the big thing on at the moment. David Zaslav did a speech at Boston University. Don't know if you watched it, but
I gotta say, whenever people say person was booed at commencement speech or person was booed at speech, a lot of times I'll look up the audio and I'll go, are you sure? Like when people said The Rock was booed at Comic-Con, I'm like, you kind of have to really look for it. You kind of have to perk your ears up a bit.
Yeah.
This David Zaslav shit. No, it is like the entire crowd.
There were chants.
There was a plane flying over.
Yeah.
This is crazy. I even felt uncomfortable for him as he's powering through this speech about being kind and respectful to the people who work for you. And it's just got these people.
Can you imagine
chanting?
Giving a speech and people
they're
start
so
booing
close to where he is? There's no way he missed it.
You're giving a big speech and people start booing it, and then you look up in the sky and there's a plane flying over.
I fucking love the scenario of that. Yeah, that was very real, man. It's impossible to miss. You don't have to look for it. It's right there.
That would make me so embarrassed that I would go home and speak to the union guy. I'd get him on the phone and go, look, mate, I'm sorry I messed up. What do you guys want? We'll try and come to a resolution on this. You're not going to get everything you want. We're not going to get everything we want, but we'll try and get to a point where this benefits both parties. I mean, it's weird watching the writer's strike discourse because there's some people who just hate what Hollywood's been putting out at the moment going, good, I'm glad they're not getting paid much. But I think if you hire someone to do a job, you should vet them. And if they do the job, you should pay them. And then you kind of deal with it from there. You shouldn't then be like, well, actually, your show wasn't that good, so we're not going to give you the money we agreed to. But there's so many things involved with it. Streaming shows are a lot shorter now, so writers, when they get hired, they don't get kept on for as long. So say back in the day, Walking Dead used to have 24 episode seasons. Writers would have a steady job where they're working for 24 episodes. That's quite a lot, keeping a paycheck coming in every week. A thing that people don't talk about with actors and writers is that it's not, you're very much self-employed and you're having to go and pitch yourself to studios for why you should be writing this show. You get hired and 3 months later you might not have a job. Russell Crowe, I watched an interview with him where he was talking about working on Neighbours, which is a soap opera in Australia, and they were kind of joking about with Russell and saying, oh, it must be so weird you've had this massive career and then there's people who were working at Neighbours when you went on as a guest for 3 episodes and they're still there 40 years later or whatever. And Russell was like, no, but I totally get the mentality because as soon as I finish a film, even I now think, am I ever going to work again? And that's the thing when you're freelancing and you're not exactly signed on as a full-time job or have a permanent contract, you are very much worried all the time that work's not going to be coming in. So if you got given a 24 episode season, you're thinking, oh, I can take a breather for a while. I know this work's coming in. And then after the season finishes, they sell that show on to other networks across different countries, for example. you guys in America, you make shows that you show on certain networks. Our TV stations and so on over here, we'll buy them and then we'll show them.
Mm,
So they get money from selling them to us, and those residuals keep coming in. On a streaming service, you haven't got anyone to sell it to, and the episodes are shorter as well. So instead of doing 24 episodes, you're doing 6 or 8 or 10, and you're not having to sell it to people in England because you've got a streaming service out that's worldwide. So they're not getting the residuals from that either. And a lot of these people are actually, when they've looked at it, they're working for less than minimum wage, and they're not asking for a ridiculous amount of money. They're just saying, can we have enough to get by on? And
yeah.
maybe a bit to enjoy ourselves. There's this weird mentality that's come out of the pandemic with all the strikes and stuff where people are thinking, oh, you should get paid just enough to live on. You shouldn't have enough to buy Funko Pops and enjoy yourself. You should, you're asking for way too much money. And when you look at what they're asking for, it's not really that much. It's not going to improve their lifestyle by a massive amount. It's just going to make them slightly more comfortable, and they're not going to be as stressed about money. And when you're going from different show to different show, it makes sense because these streaming services are killing it. Even when they lose subscribers, they're still pulling in quite a lot. They can
Well,
afford to get rid of Willow. You know what I mean?
well, even like when you look at, like what are some like Last of Us and House of the Dragon, a lot of people don't watch it on HBO. They waited for it
Mm,
to go on HBO Max.
yeah,
They would watch it there. So even their like big televised shows, a lot of the times, especially if it's some form of basic cable to premium cable, they wait for it to just go on the streamer to
yeah,
watch it there. And so, yeah, the streamers are mainly the source for a lot of these things. Like these writers also, they basically, I've what I believe the breakdown. It's been a while since I've heard it, but I think there was a big disparaging difference between like what the writers were asking for would essentially cost like 400 something $1 million, and what the producers countered with was like $80 million worth. So it's like what the producers are willing to offer is like 5 times less than what the writers
mm,
want. But a lot of what it was coming down to was making the environment feel more supported and more trusting, because they basically want people. They basically want freelance writers. They don't want to just hire anyone permanently to work on a show, and they want more. It depending on the number of episodes of a show, they want a guarantee of how many writers are on the staff. Like a lot of the times, what people might not realize is, if a show says if there's an episode that says written by this person, more often than not, there's a lot. The writing team is all involved in that. It's like there's usually someone that writes the script, but then everyone else has their input on it as well. Like it's a really good creative process. That's generally how it goes. So they need a good writing team, especially depending on how many freaking episodes you're delivering, because you are putting a lot of pressure on people. There was those stories coming out about what was that? Was it Reservation Bear? Was it? Do you know that show I'm talking about? Something Reservation.
no,
He couldn't even go to like to go attend to receive his award because he didn't make enough money to be able to pay to attend for it. Like they want to just hook him up with a seat. I forget what the
that's
show is called.
crazy.
Um, so I forget what it's called. Reservation Dog. No, it's Reservoir Dogs. But anyway, they want that basic needs met. They want to be able to be paid properly and be guaranteed like how many episodes you'll be on. They basically just want like a better contract, like something that
Yeah.
is more suitable, and of course be entitled to better pay on residuals. But I think a lot of so I was talking with someone, there is a producer I was talking with, and he was saying how they feel that, like one of the most notorious things about streamers is they don't release their numbers. They like
Yeah.
never release their numbers, because if they did, I mean, if you look at what, Disney's just recently done, HBO Max did it as well, when they just make a bunch of shows and shit vanish, you'd see that a lot of the numbers are terrible for
Yeah.
so much of what they do. And we want to be able to see those numbers because then that helps out with figuring out the compensation of the pay and all these things that everyone's trying to negotiate. But I think, these streamers are afraid to release their numbers because that would just make their stock plummet even more.
Yeah.
So,
except for Red Notice, which Red Notice was the biggest movie of all time.
Biggest thing ever, man. So
19 billion people watched it or something.
It's that Dwayne Johnson money.
Now, another big headline floating around about the writers' strike is that AI is going to be taking over their jobs. ChatGPT has made a big splash recently, and studios are starting to think we can just get this to write our entire movie and then hire someone to come in and clean things up, which I think once you hit that point with humanity, you might as well just let Skynet drop the nukes on us because that's it done. I've always thought, fair enough, AI, use it for the jobs that people don't want to do. But creative things like making art or writing stories, creating is part of the human condition. It's our soul,
Yeah.
I will, back in the day, I don't do it as much because I'm just working a lot. But back in the day, I just used to get out a pen and paper and just sit and draw. Wasn't to show to anyone. It was just because I found it relaxing and enjoyed sitting and drawing stuff. Now AI art, that I can type something in, it'll make an infinitely better picture than I could ever sit and draw. But the enjoyment that I used to have from doing that is gone. And it's the same with every single thing. I think that this is such a part of what makes us human, and it's an expression, it's art. And having a studio and having AI do it, I think you're handing over the keys to what makes us us and just giving it to a machine to strip us of everything. I dread the day when we go and watch something that's just written by AI, because I said this the other day as well on Twitter, and one of the responses was, but like, what about Morbius and stuff like that where it's terrible? And I would rather have a discussion about how bad something is and how it hasn't worked and what the flaws are, and maybe there's some good bits in it. I'd rather have that discussion than I don't see how I could have that about a piece of AI work, because all that boils down to is you've put the wrong prompt in at some point and it's generated a script that isn't that good. That is literally the criticism that you could have. Oh, the AI didn't figure out how to give this guy proper dialogue. That's terrible. But maybe they'll get it next time, you know what I mean? Whereas I think when a movie's bad or a script's bad, you can at least have a discussion about it. And there's people who built entire channels out of just tearing things apart and criticizing it, which I would rather watch someone tear something down than just have a bit of AI art or an AI script that you can't really criticize or talk about the expression in it. I think it's so short-sighted for studios to be wanting to do this.
Maybe you can use ChatGPT to write your breakdowns for you.
I know someone who tried to do it as well. There is a YouTuber out there who was experimenting with doing it. It was a corporate channel, so they have owners who, again, they're constantly trying to save money and be like, can you not do this more quicker? And we don't have to pay our staff anymore. We don't have to pay people. And I think they did look into having AI generated scripts, having AI generated voiceover, and AI edits as well. So the entire thing would just be handled by a machine.
It's too much AI.
Yeah, it is.
It's too much AI.
How can you, as a viewer, how can you attach yourself to that? It's gonna click at some point, and you're gonna think, this. I don't have a personal attachment to this. We've been talking recently about short. Well, one of the reasons that we decided to launch this podcast was because the options were either short or do podcasts. Yeah. And YouTube are clearly starting to realize, a lot of companies have realized that shorts and so on, there's not much money into them. So they've started building things around podcasts and so on, which is one of the reasons we thought, what we can just do. And you go on YouTube now and try and upload a video, you'll see a section that says create a podcast. They are clearly doing this stuff because they realize there's no money in short form content. And there was a guy who did 196 million views, and got like $2,000, which is crazy because the amount of people that would have watched that is, and to not have ads on it. But I'm getting off point there. So this there's another reason why I've kind of brought this up is because people attach themselves to personalities, and it's difficult to do that with a short. You've got to be someone like Soups is a great example of someone who's managed to build a channel and a brand off the back of shorts. Whenever you go on his TikTok, he's in the frame. You click on his page, you can see all the pictures of him, and the headlines are kind of what you read and what makes the videos different. I couldn't do that because I just do voiceover a lot of the time, and it's difficult to build a personality. And I think doing that as a video on YouTube as well, no one's going to attach themselves to just an AI creation because we crave personal interaction almost. You have parasocial relationships with people where you feel attached to them. Like we're always talking about Mr. Sunday Movies and Nick Mason, and what they've done brilliantly is that you feel like you're part of the conversation with them. And I can't see that happening with AI. I just can't see it happening.
No, I agree.
No one's John Connor in Terminator 2, you know what I mean? They're not going to think that the T-800's their dad.
I would be more, this is the part where I think I would be more interested in working with AI, like on a creative, like on a truly creative level, or watching like one of these hosting things that you're talking about where they're like, we're going AI gung ho, they're the host now. If they really let AI just become some type of sentient being, if they let it just become a creation, like if we
Just
were
a
in the
person.
stage of the movie Artificial Intelligence with like Haley Joel Osment and Jude Law, because then there would be a soul to it. Then it would be something that was truly created from humanity, like just another form of some kind of crazy child. But you know, the fear is that we're always going to be, you know, in Skynet and shit, and people taking over.
We'll get replaced, yeah.
I mean, being replaced, yeah, by humanity being replaced. So, yeah, I'm like, but if there was a way where, like, what if we just had like some good AI? If there's a way,
Maybe.
but then you'd have to control it, right? But there, we have a natural fear. It's like the same thing about, you know, when we think in science fiction about aliens coming to visit us. It's always they're coming here to destroy specifically New York City. They're coming here to like kill us all for some reason.
Good.
Instead of maybe they just want to visit us. Maybe they just landed on our planet, you know? And so I do want, maybe because that is our own perception of humanity. And then they're like, they would see how it's our own fear that they would see how corrupt and messed up humanity is, that AI would destroy us. I still would be more drawn to like, oh no, this AI I see as another person. I see as a soul.
If they get to that point, but then a lot of the reasons that they're going with AI is to save money. It's not, it's someone at a corporate level. Again, we keep talking about this is the theme of the podcast. Someone at a corporate level who doesn't understand the creative saying, well, why can't you just fire everyone and just get AI to do it? You know what I mean? It's not what's the best and most creative product. It's, but we can save money by using AI and fire everyone, can't we? I'm sure there's some community where they have a special thing where it's you buy from everyone else in this community. If someone sets up a shop, I'm butchering this right now, but if someone sets up a shop or sets up a business, even though it's a little bit more pricey, might be more expensive, you buy from them because they're part of your community and they'll then put the money back into your community. And I think that as a species, we should just boycott everything AI. So if someone makes Morbius 2 and it's going head to head with Spider-Man No Way Home 2, if Spider-Man No Way Home 2 is written by AI, as a species, we should just come together and go, no, we need to give money to Morbius 2. That's where we need to support ourselves before the AI takes over.
Because I write, you know, I've talked to you about that several times. Like I love writing. That is one of my favorite, that's arguably my favorite thing to do, where when I'm really in the groove, I really feel like this is the one time I'm not aware I don't look at it like I'm working at all. Even if I'm doing it for a work purpose, when I'm really doing creative writing on a story or whatever, I love that feeling. And I don't think I could ever. That's part of it is like the creative reward of doing it.
Yeah.
I will say, from dabbling with Chat GBT, what I think is good that could work with it is sometimes I've used it as a form of Google just to get better, like quicker research out of the way. Like I'll give an example. I was working on this thing about vampires, and I was like, I just told ChatGPT, I didn't say write this story for me. I said, give me a list of a bunch of vampire strengths and weaknesses, and tell me about them from a bunch of different movies. And put it in a list. So then I just organized it into like 10 to 15 characters, and it gave me like their strengths and weaknesses, and it allowed me to pinpoint what the commonalities were between them. So instead of going to Google and then like typing it in and then making a list on a Word document, I just had ChatGPT do it, so that way I could just see it. So to me, the times I've used it have been mainly for just like a quicker. The first time I used it, I was like fucking around a lot. I was like, write me a song in the voice of Eminem. Like I was just do stupid shit just to mess around with it.
Hit.
Yeah, I just wanted to just see like how crazy can this thing go. And I have found with messing around with like story stuff that there is an artifice that it does. It's like it often leads with like the cliches, right? You know, it's pulling from a lot of that, and sure you can guide it and whatever. But to me, it does rob of the experience. I don't mind using it when I am like, I just want to like make the research go faster so I can get to actually writing quicker. You know, like that to me is fine if I'm just quickly researching it. But yeah, if I'm not gonna, because like that kind of shit's is like for my own notes.
So it's
but it's not the screenplay itself. So yeah.
Like I said, it's getting the jobs out the way that you don't want to do, which is what I think AI should do. You know, everyone I don't know any machines. You know, my Alexa, I don't feel like she's angry or feels like she's been enslaved. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I feel like using AI to do jobs we don't want to do is totally fine, unless they get angry one day and they decide to destroy us all. I want to just sit about on the couch all day. Yeah.
I want the AI who's becoming like existential and contemplating life.
Yeah.
I want that AI.
So I think that's fine. But I think when you start taking away the creative side of things, the actual creation, I think that's you stepping over the line, and it's going to mess things up the more and more you rely on it. Because
I just feel like the biggest imposter, honestly. I would feel like
everyone
fraud.
does. Yeah.
I would like.
Oh, you mean?
No, I mean like imposter syndrome is like a thing we all saw, most of us deal with, right? But I would not feel. It would totally take away the pride and joy of like doing the task. You know, like if I just fucking dropped it into a machine and said like write it for me, it would totally
especially
rob me
if it was well received.
I know, can you
always
imagine
have
that
it. What was that saying in school? If you cheat yourself, or something like that.
There's a truth to that. There's a massive truth to that.
You'll know deep down that you ain't shit, and that imposter syndrome's gonna get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, you'll take it out on your wife or some shit, you know. So yeah.
She doesn't exist because I kept sitting around with the AI all day, so she left.
Oh,
but
well, you can now find those needs via the AI.
So that was our final topic, but is anything else you want to talk about? Got Godzilla anime show that's just been announced, or Kong Skull Island?
Paul said we're going to do an hour today.
Yeah, it's 2 hours now, but I mean, I'll tell you what.
I was like, I'm not going to interrupt Paul. we're gonna do the whole. Well, I'll end when Paul's ready to end.
Yeah. Well, I've had a fun time anyway. You know, if I was going for a run, this is the kind of thing I'd listen to. So I appreciate you letting me just talk to myself whilst I go for a run. But yeah, thanks everyone for checking this out. If you want to support the channel, or me or Greg, we're both wearing Zero Edition shirts right now. If you go to zeroedition.com, you can get your hands on one of these. They are very high very high quality fabric. They're not just cheaply thrown together. The prints are really good. You can do that. The print's not going to mess. You can wash it as many times as you want. We're very proud of this merchandise. It's not just been something we've done on the cheap. So go to zeroedition.com. My link's going to be there. Greg's link's going to be there. Ryan Harry, bloody Ryan Harry. Where's he at today? Not here, but we're still pushing his merch because we're bloody good mates. So yeah, this has been the first episode of the Real Spoilers podcast. We're available on all podcast things, I think. We should be. But if you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, I'll try and get that out. If I'm not, then message me saying why the hell aren't you on Spotify. Apple Podcasts, I'll try and get it out. So we hope you've enjoyed just sitting with us, chilling, talking about nonsense. Probably got a lot of things wrong, probably said a lot of stupid things as well. Let us know below, and we'll see you next time, where we'll be back to talk about Across the Spider-Verse, I think. So yeah.
When do you see it?
Not for a while. Not this week, but the week after. Next Thursday. So I think we might skip a week, because if there's nothing to talk about.
We're off to a good start.
Don't know how much Greg enjoys listen to me ramble on for 2 hours, but we'll be back. Don't you worry about that. We
fail, like, the number one thing we always tell a new YouTuber is learn to be consistent. And first way off, we're skipping the next week. We'll continue following.
Well, it'll be a nice surprise when we pop up next week with a brand new episode just before Across the Spider-Verse.
About why Kathleen Kennedy should be fired.
Yeah. There's 501 videos now. So we'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.